Hello there, and welcome to G Woman Voices of Influence, our series that shines a light on extraordinary women who are making an impact in business, leadership, communities around the world. My name is Frankie Picasso, and today I am delighted to welcome CandyBarone. She is a relational leadership and cultural architect, founder of You Empowered Strong. Candy is helping leaders and organizations move beyond transactional performance models into conscious, relational ecosystems built on trust, accountability, and belonging. So through her pioneering work, she is redefining what leadership looks like in the modern world and demonstrating that leadership isn't just about authority or achievement, but about creating environments where people feel seen, valued, and empowered to thrive. Candy, welcome to Voices of Influence. It's wonderful to have you here.
Frankie, it's an honor to be here. I'm super excited to be in this conversation today.
Me too. So today, you are known as a relational leadership and cultural architect, as we said, but every journey begins somewhere. So what was the defining moment or realization that led you to challenge traditional leadership models and create a new paradigm centered on trust, belonging, and human connection?
I would say there's been multiple defining moments. Big one was looking at how current models play out when I was in my own corporate career. Multiple things that either brought me into one instance where I was in the hospital or just pushing against a system that wasn't working. And so since then, I have seen how working on a relational level and working at the root of an organization actually leads us into a different way to lead entirely. And so bringing that 20 years of corporate into the work I've done over the last 13 years really has kind of shined a light on where organizations have created sort of a cultural cancer and don't understand where the culture isn't matching the mission or matching what they are trying to accomplish and impact in the world.
Okay. So your work is, rooted in integrity, as we know, accountability and conscious leadership. So who or what has influenced you most in your philosophy on leadership or how has that shaped the way that you serve organizations today?
Oh, that's a great question. I would say it's kind of a twofold answer. One would be, and I always think it's interesting when you hear people say this, I would say it's the leaders that I saw not being in integrity. Whereas probably one of the most powerful influences in my intentionality and desire to bring a deeper level of integrity into organizations. You see a lot of leaders, what they say, leading from fear, right? Which isn't really a thing, but there's a scarcity model, there's an agenda, there's an ego at play. And when you see the detriment of what happens when people are standing in that position, you see how it affects not only your culture, but the very people, the heartbeat of your organization. So I would say they have been a profound influence in sort of holding up that mirror to say, is this really how we want to show up together? And then I've been blessed where I've had a handful of leaders who have really cracked open what I would say more heart, more compassion, more of a nurturing approach to how they can show up in that space. And so when you kind of got the 180-degree polar opposite, you can really see what's effective and what's not. So I have been fortunate in my career to see both sides of that equation and see what is going to be most beneficial versus what's going to create that toxicity or that cultural cancer that I call it, that kind of metastasizes and spreads through an organization.
Okay, I love that. So we're going to talk about impact and transformation. So you help organize.
Did I lose you, Frankie? So I'll talk a little bit about, there's Frankie. I think
I am back. I don't know what happened to me, but I am back. I'm so sorry. This is it's just so bizarre. Okay. I think I was talking about impact and transformation, wasn't I? Okay.
You were, and then you cut off, so I don't know what your question was about that.
Yeah, good. That's right. I don't either. So give me a second. This is what happened. Don't you love live TV? I just love it. Boy, anything can and will happen. with Frankie. And it's my birthday today, so you can give me a little, give me like a brush off or whatever. Okay, so as I was saying, you help organizations move from transactional performance models into relational ecosystems where people feel seen, valued, and connected. So what transformation are you most passionate about creating, and what changes have you witnessed when leaders embrace this approach?
Yeah, I would say it's two things. One, it's really helping leaders learn how to lead from love with love. I think we're so afraid to use the word love in a business environment. And what we don't remember, or what we don't hold to be kind of a guiding light, is business is personal. I know there's so many adages that are like, business isn't personal. It is extremely personal. You're talking about human beings interacting with other human beings. It doesn't get more personal than that. And so when we can be reminded of the fact that business is about how we are putting our gifts and service to those who need what we have to offer, we start to realize that leadership then needs to be steeped in a place that comes from love with love. And so watching leaders transform and being able to actually use that as a common language within their organization, that transformation is significant. The other is changing a baseline equation that most leaders, I will say, don't even know what they mean when they say ROI. We talk about it as a return on investment, which I would even offer in most cases, people, if they know what that means, they think about it being money in versus money out, versus its real function. A return on investment is a function of time, money, energy, people, resources, culture, and the lifestyle we're creating. But what I would offer is the bigger transformation is when we move from return on investment to a return on impact. And so when you can watch leaders move through that threshold and transform into a space to really embody leading from love with love, and their new metric for success becomes a return on impact, you see an entire organization, entire culture shift, where everybody then is given the opportunity to lead from where they're at. You create a culture that feels empowered. You create a space where everyone is playing to their highest and best level and are putting their gifts collectively in service to those who need them, want them, and they're here to serve. And so it's a very significant shift when you can get people to drop into both of those energies and recognize that business is deeply personal, and we need to remember how personal business really is.
Candy, I think it's even more personal for women. And I'll tell you why. Because you do not leave yourself, your family, everything at the door when you walk into an office. You're all of that and everything. Now, for a lot of women, they might, you might have an interview and say, well, do you plan to have children? Do you plan to do this, get married, blah, 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 blah. Okay, let's say you've already done all that. But at the same time, you're still a whole person, and you stay, and that whole person walks into that with all of those gifts and experiences that came before that business and with that business. And so, yes, it is with love. And also, I know in culture, in an organization that I had worked at, I was a special advisor for Spirit. And so what did that mean? Well, people used to come and not say hello, not say good morning to one another in that office. And when I left, people were smiling and saying hi again. So, and I know that you come from an engineering background. I know the engineer, who was above me, that's not a metric, but it is a metric. It is a metric. It is an ROI.
It needs to be a metric. And so here's the thing. I love everything you're saying, because first of all, there's this myth that there's work-life balance. No, there's your life. There's your life, and work is only one of the spokes on the wheel. And we spend up to 2/3 of our life in a working capacity. What we don't realize, and this is where I also talk about relationships are the new currency. It is, and trust is the exchange in that currency, because what we are missing, and the metrics that we're missing, if we want to call it a metric, we're measuring the wrong things. We are the most disconnected, we're the most connected, disconnected culture ever. And we as human beings are wired and designed. And so, yes, as an engineer, it's funny because people ask me, how does an engineer do this work? You're kind of sometimes in the woo-woos. And I'm like, actually, it's an energy system. It is just the energy system of people. It's how our energy works together. It's how our wiring works. It's our own coding and our circuitry that I realized that my engineering background actually just brought me to do this work on a bigger level, because we're talking about quantum mechanics, quantum physics, epigenetics. We're talking about the interwoven energetic way we connect in our humanity and as humans, that doesn't leave the workplace. Like I think that people think, oh, well, we leave the fact that we're humans at the door. That's the opportunity, is that too many organizations are still leaving the humanity at the door. They're leaving the humanness. I had a friend of mine, he's a recruiter. He owns a recruiting company. He was actually the HR that brought me in when I was in corporate at GE. And it was funny because he posted something. He's like, we need to have more conversations around mental health and around aging parents. And I said, and menopause, because we're not having conversations around real life that is happening for real people in environments. And somehow we think all that goes away. Like if I had if I have an aging parent, or if I menopause, things that are going on. I mean, we all know as women, brain fog. You have a moment where you think you're going crazy. You can't remember something. Yet somehow there's a shame to that. Right. And that's what happens when we start to create conversations that let people fully be seen in all of their humanness, including the stuff that may be messy or misunderstood, or those are the real metrics. It's really around people first. I find that interesting because I hear a lot of organizations go, we're people first. And in the same breath,
but they're not.
Bottom line, not people first. You can't say both things in the same sentence and be people first. And we really need to redefine what that means to be people first.
Yeah. And you are the sandwich generation. You know, you have the aging parent and the children. It's a really hard place to stand and be.
It is. And we don't have the tools. We don't have the education. One of the things I hear for the leaders that want to move through this transition, there's a lot of them that resist it because they can. There's a privilege that, and I had a client once, he said, I have executive privilege. I'm like, you said it, not me. There is a privilege when you look a certain way and you've walked through a certain path and you've been able to play the game, that you don't have to change. But for those leaders that do, the one thing I hear, and I heard it at the start of the pandemic, and I've really heard it through, is whatever this is we're going through, as the world is on fire sometimes and we're shifting, my biggest fear is, when I ask them what keeps them up at night, the conversation is that my biggest fear is whatever we're going through collectively, individually, is at the end of the day, I'm going to do more damage than good to the people I care most about, my family, my community, my team. And then I've watched grown men and women just break down and cry from the weight they're carrying because they haven't been given the tools to lead differently. Some of them, it's not from a lack of desire, it's a lack of, they don't know. And so when you can go in and provide new ways to see things, new strategies and new tools, you give leaders that actually have a burning desire for that impact to show up differently and to learn differently and to bring that vulnerability that comes with being a student to the table that, again, changes everything.
Okay, well, that's a good segue, because now we're going to talk about your superpower. So you bring relational intelligence, conscious culture, human design in a way that's truly unique. And so what would you say is your superpower, and how has it helped you create lasting impact with teams and organizations?
Yeah. So first of all, I would say part of my superpower is bringing a couple things together that most people would go, they don't add up. So I find a through line between the intersection point of leadership development, relational dynamics, and human design. And so when you look at, again, my background in mechanical engineering, bringing that ability to see how energy works, how energy moves, I always walk into spaces and can see and hear what's not being said as much as what is being said. And so oftentimes I can even see people's kind of circuitry flash before my eyes and can see what's triggering and what's happening even before I run their human design. So walking into those spaces to also be the person that says, look, we're not going to put another Band-Aid on the symptom. I'm going to help you go underneath. And I like to say it's underneath the foundation. We've got to find where the initial crack started, or the initial tumor in the cultural cancer. And so I have an innate ability to hear and see the sacred cows and elephants that aren't being addressed in any given organization or space, and then helping them very quickly call the BS and connect the dots to identify, oh, this isn't just another leadership training or another consulting. This is some heavy lifting that we've got to go back to our root and really restructure the foundation itself. And so I can do that quickly. I can help people excavate that when they are fully committed and invested in creating that shift. But I can read that space very quickly and identify where those leaks are happening.
That's a big gift. That's a big gift. So we're going to move on to amplifying women's voices. So you've dedicated your career to helping people feel seen, heard, and valued. Why is the amplification of women's voices so critical in shaping the future of leadership, business, and culture today? And what would you say women are still waiting for permission to use their voice?
Well, I would say they're waiting for permission because there's just still a lot of conditioning. We have a system that is designed to stifle women's voices in general. There is a fear of divine feminine energy. And I will say it's interesting because when you really look at what leadership is steeped in the divine feminine, which is a nurturing, compassionate, empathetic way to lift and grow other people in their leadership. Because leadership ultimately is, in my definition of leadership, it's a function of three things. It's how we choose to show up, how we choose to serve, and how we choose to take personal responsibility, meaning we all have a set of gifts that when we put them in service to others, we are in that our own leadership. It's leading ourselves first. It's leading that forward. And I always talk about leadership as kind of the stance where you have one arm out, letting someone lift and rise, help you rise, but you also have an arm back where you're doing the same for someone else. That's a very feminine energy. It's all about growth. It's about development. It's about nurturing. The divine masculine is actually the frameworks and the support that's supposed to help hold that leadership. But we as women were never designed to operate in isolation. Our magic, our power comes when we build community and are in circles. And so we are, again, the most disconnected, connected culture, connected, disconnected, however you want to say that. Without that leadership, without women coming back in circles, we're missing a fundamental piece of our own humanity. We're missing this elevated level of consciousness and leadership that is so needed in the world right now. And so giving women the space and the permission or loaning that to them so that they can, and I would say before they can even amplify it, sometimes they've got to learn how to activate it, that it's actually awakening, activating, and then amplifying that voice and trusting that all of those things that have been conditioned around, you were too much, you were this, you were that, whatever it might have been, that is some of your innate superpower, and the world needs that. Every one of us is on this planet for a reason right now. There's no accident in that. And when we can understand that none of us are meant to have our voices be stifled or suffocated, it's when we can rise in that we start to create the kind of meaningful and sustainable change. And women have a coding for that. We have a wiring and coding that is ours. It is the energy we bring.
Right.
And I can't think of a time more in the world where we need that kind of leadership.
It's interesting though, Candy, this connected, most connected, not connected is about the isolation of being connected with your device and not other people. Right. Well, and children are being brought up that way.
The facade.
And it's scary.
It's easy. I mean, we say things we would never say to somebody in person when we're behind our screens and otherwise, and we feel connected when we have an actual epidemic of isolation on our hands, and mental health is on the rise. We need a nurturing energy that says, how do we? And women, part of the conditioning has been we've been pitted against each other. Only one can succeed. Only, especially if you came from a corporate background. We need to be. It's why we say it takes a village, right, to raise a child. We are meant to be in circle and community. It's why we had tribes. We're meant to activate each other's gifts, and the only way we can do that is in connection. It's through compassion. It's through this way that we communicate. Because the other thing I like to say is we have a culture that complains and commiserates. We don't have a culture that connects and communicates. We need to activate real, meaningful communication and connection. And again, women do that innately, inherently, when we shed the programming and conditioning that's kept us
Yes.
for so many years.
So if you had a message to leave to the women about leadership, belonging, and the power of their voice, what would you want them to remember? And you've just said a little bit about that connection, but what's your last words to them?
Yeah, it would be two things. One would be, you are enough. You have always been enough. You will always be enough. You were never broken. There is nothing broken about you. You are enough. You are also not too much. No matter who wants to tell you your voice is too loud, that you are taking up too much space, it's not true. You are here to take up space. You are here to be too much. You are here to step in all the two-ness of who you are. So you are enough and you are not too much. And you get to be in all of that and live your life in accordance and in integrity with who you are, and stop pleasing and being nice to appease someone else's version of who they think you should be.
I love it. I love it so much. The voice of CandyBarone and the image of her too. Thank you so much, Candy. A woman with a voice influences her world, and a woman with a platform changes it. I'm Frankie Picasso. This has been a G-Woman Media Voice of Influence interview. Thank you so much for being with us today. Take care.